multiple types of coating, multiple layers of coating, foiling, embossing, Cyrel plates, whatever those are, those each, depending on the project, may require more or less trap. So we need to see what the customer's given us. Depending on what the graphic designer has provided to us, we may need to ask for something different, create something different, or it may be created perfectly as it is. As a rule, we'll still have to adjust some trapping issues, though, for the more complex pieces. For the most part, all of our customers, we're doing an Epson proof, which is just we take a quality sheet of proofing material, and we go ahead and the Epson proof is an inkjet proof, so we're doing an inkjet proof onto it. We do a true dot proof called a Fuji Final proof. That probably only happens about 5% of the time. The majority of the time, the Epsons are a much more economical solution, and most customers are very happy with them as far as color and as far as proofing goes. The other thing that happens in this room is data processing. So on the other side of the room, excuse me, what we do there is we'll take in the data files. So as these data files come in, we'll go ahead and sort those data files. We'll process them depending on what the requirements are for the job. We'll sort them for the post office. We'll do that pre-sort. We'll go ahead and if the job has variable data within the job, and by that I mean this may be the front of a card. It just as easily could be a birthday card that says Happy Birthday Tracy. Well, if that's going to be in 4-color process, we would be putting that on a variable press, and one of our digital presses downstairs that's capable of doing the variable, I'll need to print that in the order for the post office. So same thing, I've got to start by processing the data for the Postal Service. After that, I embed all of the rest of the variable material, whatever that may be, for the customer. It may be different offers, different prizes, whatever it may be. We do a lot of gaming here, we do a lot of hospitality, so with that there are a lot of offers. Think about Vegas and all the different offers, just the level of player, the level of visitor that comes out here. Based on that, they'll receive different offers. You can have a job with literally hundreds or even thousands of tiers or thousands of levels rather, of variable data. Any questions for pre-press? Okay. Next we'll go ahead and around the corner and down the hall, we're going to head into imposition, and for us that's our plating department. So that's where we make our litho plates. I'm wet trapping the ink. It'll have a different amount of trap required on it for that press versus if I'm dry trapping the ink, I may not require that much trap.
What's the dry trap?
Dry trap is just on the UV press would be where I am printing 4-color process, and in between each of the 4 units or after each of the 4 units, I'm curing it with a UV light. So I print the black ink and I cure it. I print the yellow ink and I cure it. I print the red, the blue. I cure it right after each one. A wet trap would be where wet ink falls on top of the wet ink until at the end when I would cure it.
So the wet intensity is spreading more?
Spreads more, correct, because that same dot is getting smashed by multiple blankets, and at the same time it happens very quickly on press, but it'll also have an opportunity to absorb into the sheet. So you may print a dot that in series, when you printed it was this big, but by the time you go through the blanket, by the time it absorbs into the sheet, it'll actually swell and it might be this big. So again, if we're looking for a special effect, depending on a specific color, shade, or look that we're after, we may wet trap or we may dry trap at different parts of the press. I don't have to do the whole job. I can wet trap these colors and I can dry trap these colors depending on what it is we're looking for. Different sheets require a different trap. It's just a matter of turning lights on and off.
The point is anything weird, especially when it's weird, different than the usual, they should come to you first before setting up the job.
Absolutely. 4-color process, we were talking earlier about trapping. 4-color process jobs, the trapping for the most part is preset in our software for that, so that happens automatically. We've already programmed it to do the types of trapping, the amount of trapping that we want done for our presses. The differences would be when someone throws in a metallic or an opaque ink, so maybe like an opaque white, a fluorescent ink, any of those, the trapping may need to be different based on the job. So is the fluorescent banner that somebody's printing, is that in the forefront or is that in the background? Should my ink trap to it or should it trap to my process sink? That may vary. So it just depends on the look, depends on the piece. We can pretty much look at the piece. If you send us a PDF, we can tell you what to do, or we can tell you, find out how you did it, and then we'll know how to correct it when it's here. When we say correct it, it really doesn't take that long. That's us looking at like a single page. We're going to look at it for a few minutes and be able to tell just about everything about it. Again, 90% of what comes in is fine. But in part of our pre-flight, some of the things we're looking at are fold jobs and the size of the panels. Die cutting, how is it going to die cut? You may give us a job that laser die cuts. Again, the jobs, there's so many variables and so many ways to do commercial printing these days that depending on what it is that the designer has created, what the illusion is that they're after, that's going to change how we do the job. Now, sometimes that's restricted by budget. A lot of times we'll come in with a budget that's this big, but an idea that's this big. Well, subsequently, we'll need to understand what it was that you wanted to begin with, and then once we understand your budget, we can tell you how to get as close to that as you can. Well, you can emulate this process, we can fake this process, we can do certain things to give you the look that you wanted, but I don't have to go through that exact process, so you don't have to pay for it. So in here is, again, our imposition department. I'm going to grab a plate.
I just made one.
You have a good one?
I just made one.
Well, I'm going to show them what it's going to end up like.
Yeah, I was going to put it in the processor, so I didn't know what to do.
No, you can go ahead. So this plate has been, he just imaged it. So he took a plate that looks blue like this. For most part, it has an emulsion on the top of it, basically a chemical. He's going to put it in one of these two devices here. It's going to spin it and image it with a laser. That laser is going to image and not image certain areas. We burn a positive plate. So the plate, after he runs through the processor, is going to wash away all the excess blue, so all the excess image. If everything goes right, our ink is going to stick to the blue image. So this plate, this is a bad plate, so I can be a little rough with it. This plate is a black plate. So even in the 4-color process picture of what I'm going to guess is pizza, this is the black that is in that photograph of pizza. So we've taken the same image, we've stepped it multiple times. If I'm reading this right, more than likely this job is going to be a work and tumble, because these are going to be the fronts of the flyer, this will be the back of the flyer. So I'm going to print this one side, I'm going to flip the sheet over, print the other side. This is what it looks like, that press is there. But as you can see, he's got one now. As he's coming through, puts a chemical on it. We wash the emulsion off of it. It's a developer. So we develop the plate, and at the end he's gumming, or he's finishing the plate. So basically he's sealing it so that the plate doesn't oxidize. If the plate oxidizes, it'll pick up ink in that area. So right now, ink won't stick to this area. It only sticks to the blue area. And what's happening here are your dots. So this is a percentage of screen. This might be 50% black, 30% black through here.
That's a cyan plate.
Okay. So same thing, this is a job for, looks like that Tropicana Laughlin.
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like a monthly self-mailer, I would guess, just for April 2014. This is probably a job that's going on tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah,
if you're burning plates for it now.
We actually have already printed this one.
Okay.
It should be down and getting imprinted.
Okay. So we may see that actually in our mail shop. When we go over to digital imaging, you'll see it there. Any questions on plating or imposition?
How do these plates get downstairs?
We lug them. They go in a bag, and I got a guy.
They get put in here and they get carried down.
No
Four
shoot.
plates isn't too bad. 8 plates is okay. 16, it's getting heavy.
No shoot. No shoot or conveyor, huh?
Well, I'm trying to think. They had a chute and never put it in.
Actually, the dumbwaiter's in the other room now, but yeah, it never got put in.
We put up a wall.
So how many do you need to bring? Like 8 to the max, or like?
Well, it depends on the job.
This one's a work and turn, so this would be 4 plates.
And again, so this same thing. This would be an outside. This would be an inside. So I'm going to hang 4 plates. I'm going to print this on one side of the sheet, and I'm going to take that same sheet of paper, flip it over, run it back through the press. When I run it back through the press, these insides will be printing with a front on them. So this job is going to take 4 plates, but it'll have to go through the press twice to make that happen.
I wanted to ask, when you're printing them, are you printing reverse or is it printing like backwards, or are you printing it correct? And you have to label it onto anything.
You're talking about right reading?
Yeah.
So basically, our plates are positives, so they're right reading, and that's kind of how you can define that. Our plates are right reading, so when we go on the press, you'll actually see a plate on a press. The rollers will ink up the plate, so this blue will turn to red, yellow, blue, or black, depending on the unit that it's in. That will print onto a blanket. So basically, that plate will roll around onto a blanket cylinder, and now the image is reversed. So now that that image is reversed, it goes around and then applies it to the paper. As it applies it to the paper, that process is the offset process. That's where offset comes from. It's going through, and that's where you get right reading again. So the plate is right reading, the blanket will be reverse or wrong reading. When it goes onto the paper, then it's right reading.
Makes it easy for proofing the plates, isn't it?
Yes, for me it's much better than, I've never worked in a negative shop, have you, Chip?
No.
But I'm glad I never have. Any other questions? Imposition? Okay. So this is our press room. It's the night shift and we're slow tonight, so I just have one press running, so we'll go over there in a second. Before we go there, just want to give you a general idea of what you're going to see at the console. So on the console, this is where we make all the adjustments. We make our ink adjustments, we make our water adjustments from here, we make our press movements from here. One of the things that happens is we have a scanner that scans across the sheet, and it'll scan a series of color bars across the bottom, and it's a spectrophotometer. So basically it's a densitometer. It's a little bit more than a densitometer, but for the most part we read just density. We will read dot gain and check the dot gain, we will check trap, and we will check density are the main things that we're looking at with this. So for us, that really gets down to, on a more basic level, how much ink is on the sheet. Do I need more red or less red? Do I need more blue or less blue to accomplish the colors that we're looking for? Because I'm going to take your RGB image that you guys are producing on your screen, convert that to CMYK, I print in CMYK. What it does is when I convert it to CMYK and my scanner goes across, it reads my black bars, my blue bars, my red bars, and it assigns a numerical value to it. So right now my black is set at 168 is my house standard. We ran his last job here at 170, so basically 1.7. And it shows here where all of his numbers are. The human eye can see, most humans can see probably 4 or 5 points difference. The computer can see it in 1 point. So that's the difference. It can see a change in color or a need for a color change before a human can see it. Most trained people can see about 3 dots, maybe 3 to 4 dots. Again, most lay people, like you guys, can probably see a difference of maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 points. But it takes the human guesswork out of it. Color is subjective, and we all see color a little bit differently from each other. So because of that, what we've done is the printing industry has created a system that assigns a numerical value to it. Now I print to that number. I may print to that number, have a house standard, print to that number, and get a press sheet where I'm happy, but then the designer or the customer may come out and want to make a change. More red, like I said, less blue, yes, less yellow over here, whatever that may be, you can still make those changes. Once we do that, we'll establish a new baseline, and then that'll be where we go to from there. We have a house standard that we go to that works for 99% of the jobs. But if we have a particular customer or a customer that is new and wants to see a specific job, a lot of times new customers will come in for a couple of press checks until they get comfortable with the facility, until they've gotten some of their jobs out of the way, then they're perfectly fine. So the same basic setup is on all of the presses, but let's go ahead and head over to the UV press right now. These are conventional presses, so these are oil-based presses. They use the same printing plates, but they use an oil-based ink instead of a polymer-based ink. The UV press is running with a polymer-based ink, which is literally a plastic-based ink. We'll go ahead and step over here. So this press will print take a blank sheet, it'll print 4 colors. It'll coat the sheet, so I can put a specialty coating, either a flood or a gloss. I can put a specialty coating on it. It cures it, it perfects it, so it flips the sheet over, and then I print the other side of the sheet all in one pass. So I print 4 more colors. There's another coater at the tail end. Now I can also print it as a straight press, which means I could print 8 colors on one side if I wanted to. That might be 4-color process, plus some metallics, plus an opaque white, plus a fluorescent, some specialty colors, some varnishes. I can do that in one pass if that's what you want. Depends on what the designer has put together. We'll go ahead and head down towards the console. What's that?
Does this process ever make any errors?
It's a manufacturing process, so yes, errors are always made, but with the bolt-on pieces that we put, what it does is it minimizes the possibility and it raises the awareness. Because again, as the press starts to see a change or a need for color, it literally is asking the pressman, I see this need for a color swing, do you want to change something? The pressman can say yes or no. It'll also ask him, do you want to make the change or do you want me to make the change? Because a lot of pressmen, you might let the press make the swing. Most pressmen will want to make the change themselves. They'll see the recommendation and then they can decide whether they want to follow the recommendation or not. So right now he's printing 4-color process on one side. Are you perfecting? So he's actually perfecting also. So for us, he's printing one side of the sheet. He's printing one side of the sheet, and it's coming through the press. And again, prints 4-color process. Then it flips the sheet over, and now this side is still white. It grabs the sheet, pulls it through the press, and that's the rest of it. So it prints the other side. So he's actually printing that over that right now. Now what we're going to do is we'll cut this down. He's got a key line for the cutter operator. This is a shell that goes somewhere else. I'm going to personalize this shell. There's not a lot of information, but here's a mailing panel, so I'm going to put in mailing information. Say this is going to Tracy. It's going to have all of Tracy's information as far as his offers. And I believe on this piece, it will actually have the coupons for the dollar bill exchanger on the slots. So depending on the piece, some of them have that, some of them don't. I believe this one does. This will also go over and get imprinted. That variable imprint will happen in our mail shop. So that's our digital imaging. That's one of our last stops. Well, we'll take a look at that. Any questions on the press side? Okay, we'll head out to bindery. Thank you, Andy. So this is our cutting department. So these are programmable cutters. If you watch what he's doing, he's got a back gauge in the back of the cutter that's constantly moving. It moves to a pre-programmed depth, and he'll spin, twist, and move his sheet to the appropriate position. He'll push the 2 buttons on the side, clamp will come down, hold it in position, and the knife comes down. Pretty sharp knife, a lot of pressure, a lot of power. What's that? You don't have to be quick. There's a lot of safety on it. If you look before the blade cycles, he's bringing back to his hip, his hands back to his hips. There's 2 buttons. He's got to push both buttons simultaneously for it to go off. If he pushes one button too soon before the other button, it won't go off. He's leaning forward into it right now. Well, he's leaning past about 7 infrared beams of light. As he's breaking that beam of light, it also won't come down. So even if he's leaning in and I walked up behind him and hit the buttons, it still wouldn't go down. So there's a lot of safety involved.
It used to be that safe.
No, that safety came from a lot of accidents, actually, yes. They can still happen. You can still move too fast. You can put your hand where it doesn't belong. If you watch, he's running a foot pedal, and that foot pedal will bring the clamp down by hand. It's probably coming down with, I'm going to say, 100, 150 psi of pressure. So you can put your hand under it, and it's going to hurt. But that's about all that'll happen. It might break the skin. But as soon as you push the buttons, that hydraulic pressure in that clamp jumps up to about 5,000 psi. So that's like a car driving over 1 square inch. So that will crush and pop anything underneath it. And then as you can see with the blade, it'll cut through a 2x4. Because literally that's what paper is. It's just solid wood. What's that?
What's the tightest or smallest?
Well, the smallest cut is really, they'll probably make a move of 10 thousandths, which is probably like twice as thick as a piece of paper. When you make too small of a cut though, one of our problems is I can't get the waste away. So you end up trying to dig all these shavings of paper away. So we try and, in our gutters, in between our pieces, we'll put larger pieces so that the weight of them alone will make them fall away, so I can just push them away easily. So instead of putting the pieces real close together, we'll even move them apart a little bit just to get some weight on that waste so that it will fall away from the blade. Normally he wouldn't be doing product so small on this cutter, but looks like they're getting behind and he's doing a variable job. My guess is same thing. This job either printed variable or it printed litho and then went and had variable imprints done to it. So this is a buckle folder, very popular folder. So really what he's doing right now is we've taken a press sheet where these were probably printed either 2 or 4 up. We've cut them down at the cutter to singles. And now he's basically just folding that sheet in half. Coming out of here. Scoring it as it comes out. Going into the right angle. Folding it twice. Thank you. And this is his finished product. So basically took that flat sheet, folded it in half, folded it in half again. Now, it isn't finished and it doesn't have a cover because this is part of a book. So this would be, for us, it'd be considered a signature. I'm going to take this signature, I'm going to probably stack 1, 2, or 3 more signatures on top of it on a saddle stitcher. So on a saddle, just like that, I'll staple it. For us, we call it stitching, so I'll go ahead and stitch it. And then I'll do a 3-sided trim, and then you'd have the finished book. We'll have to look on the way back. If the stitcher is running, we can take a look at that. But that would be the next step for this. When he's done, it'll go to stitching. We've got a variety of folders. They're different sizes, they're different speeds, different configurations. They do different things. So it depends on what it is. If it's a simple half fold, if it's a letter fold for something basic, or is it a pocket folder that needs to glue and fold and create a pocket, we've got that too. Just depends on what people are looking for.
What's all the tools on the wall for it?
The wheels?
Yeah.
The wheels on the wall that you see there on that pegboard are a variety of either pull wheels or slitters, perfs, but where you're going to see those are going to be in here. So basically you've got a series of 2 wheels on top, and they may be pull wheels. For the most part, just rubber, and it pulls it out, and all it does is get it out of the first unit and push it into the second unit. You may have another unit that has a blade on it, and that blade, it can be a perf blade, it can be a score blade. So if we're going to perf something, we might perf it on the folder. Folder perfs are very rough. We don't do a whole lot of folding perfs in finished work. We do that mostly for signature work. If the job was bigger and more complex, I might have perfed this fold before I folded it. But for the most part, it's a very basic fold, so we didn't need to do that. A lot of times we'll perf it on jobs that fold and keep folding, because that is an escape for the air. So when I trap the air in it, that gives a release for the air. When I go through the rollers, it has a place for the air to get out. But just a variety of perf wheels, slitters, and score wheels. Same job that's on the folder right now. So basically we just saw this getting folded. So you can see the first one is dropping on the chain, comes down a couple of positions, then the cover drops on top of it, goes down a little bit further, goes through a caliper. That caliper is sensing how thick it is in case I'm missing one or in case I have a double. If it isn't too few or too many, it'll run a stitch in it. It'll push it up top into the trimmer, and then he's actually trimming it. So then he's doing the final trim. So when it's done, it's just a normal stitched book. The crossovers are lining up. Everything looks really good.
How many can that do per minute or in a day?
Right now, that's probably running about 3,000 or 4,000 an hour is about what that's doing. We're a little light as far as workload goes right now, and I think he's just getting started on this. That speed will pick up over time. Any questions on stitching?
How old is that?
Right now, so any foiling, embossing, perfing, scoring, die cutting, anything like that. And you can kind of take a look around and just get a general idea for the different types of pieces. Anything, this is a very good customer of ours, Kid Sounds. These are flashcards for kids, for schools. Teachers got together, they created a a company and came to us. We produce the flashcards and the kits. Not only do we print them and die cut them, we build the kits for them. So we'll put the kits together and give them to their distribution center. But over here we're die cutting on the cylinders, which these are some of the older pieces of equipment. These cylinders here, the vintage is probably the mid-60s, I believe, is probably how old those are. They just keep running and running. Very good pieces of equipment. Never have a problem with them. What's that?
What if there is?
If there are still companies that repair them. The company that made it doesn't repair it, but because by now all the patents have gone out, aftermarket companies have jumped in and support it. So there's a couple of companies, but for the most part, I'd say in the 8 years I've been here, we've probably called a tech out to repair those 2 or 3 times is all that's happened. Again, just the type of equipment and the vintage of the equipment, it was built not to have an issue. Now the Browse is a newer piece of equipment. It's a good piece of equipment. It does not print. It will run a 28 by 40 sheet. So the biggest sheet that I can print in the other room, that press takes. It'll do foiling, embossing, die cutting. I can print multiple colors of foil at the same time if that's what we want to do. Just depends on what your project is. That press will probably run 4,000 or 5,000 an hour. I'm not sure what he's doing right now, if he's die cutting or if he's foiling. No. So this is probably our newest piece of equipment. It's about 8.5 years old right now. Again, the newer piece of equipment, you still probably have to have somebody come out once a year and work on it. Newer means more electronics, more bells and whistles, and just like a car, the more things you have to go wrong, the more things are going to go wrong. These machines are very mechanical. So when something goes wrong, I can take that one part in and machine that part, have another one made, or buy a new part and put the part on, and everything's fine. Electronics, you have to figure out exactly what it is, and then you have to get the right electronic, and that guy doesn't make the electronics anymore, and now you got to get it from this guy. It's all over the board. We'll go ahead and walk a little further. I think at the other end, Ron has a table set up for us that has some foiling and embossing samples. So when we say die cutting, for us, that's basically cutting out a shape. It may be cutting a full perimeter shape like this. It may just be putting business card slits into something where you're just going to slip your business card. But basically, we're running it through a machine, one sheet at a time, and we're taking what we call this is steel rule die. We're taking a steel rule die and basically going down, and with steel and pressure behind it, squeezing from here, going on to a steel platen behind it. You're die cutting, you're cutting the sheets one at a time. Now to give you an idea, okay. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, it's basically just a piece of plywood where a die maker will cut a series of rules and put in those rules that are either score or perf or die cut, whatever it is that you're looking for. This is a fairly simple one because it's just a couple of straight edges, but you may get one that's a little more complex with all of these shapes. So again, an individual is going in and bending these rules by hand. He's cutting the board by hand, and he's bending those steel rules to fit into this cut that he put in the board.
How long would that take?
Me looking at this, I'm seeing that this was done with a laser die cutter. So actually a laser burned these slits in the wood. So if you look, there's also, in comparison, there's no drill holes. What they're doing here is basically cutting out that shape. They leave certain portions where they don't do the full perimeter so that that block of wood stays in there. And when they bend the rule to go around it, inside the steel rule, they'll cut a notch out to go up and over that. But if you, these are just foam pads that come off, but that is literally just a knife. I can, same thing in your kitchen, I can drag my finger across it this way and I'm fine, but if I drag it the other way, it's going to cut me. So that could be a perf rule, which is really just a cutting rule with grooves cut into it. Just a series of grooves. That's all a perforation rule is. And it may be a score, and that score would just be rounded at the top instead of sharpened. But depending on what it is you were going to do, here's one that Ron had pulled out. This is one where, again, this one here was done by hand. So all of these rules, all of this was bent by hand. Same thing, we'll put it in, and that's the steel rule die. This is the side, this is the sharp side, and that's part of what the foam does. The foam basically ejects all the scrap in the waste so it doesn't stick inside the die. It pushes everything away. Also, so that sheet can go on to the next sheet. Otherwise, it would be trapped around the knives and I couldn't pull forward. So that foam is just pushing it away from the blade. But here's an example of what it is. So this one was just somebody had for a flyer that we did. And then Ron has some examples here of, looks like a score, maybe a cutting rule, and then some perf rule. And for the most part, all of the die cutting over here started like that. It started as straight rule, and it got bent into these shapes. Then go ahead and step up and take a look at some of these pieces. Ron put these up here so we could take a look at them. They're just a variety of different pieces that we've done in letterpress. So some of them are foiled, some of them are embossed, some of them are die cut. So this is a brass die. This is actually carved out. If you look at it closely, you can see that it was actually carved by hand. So an individual carved this out and then created the female portion of it. The male portion is a resin. This is a resin that hardens. So now I have a male and a female. What happens is I take whatever it is they want me to print, I put that in there, and the same, again, the letterpress process for the most part is two steel platens coming together under pressure. Well, when one of them has this attached to it and the other has this, and you put the paper between it, that's what's happening. Basically a combination of heat and pressure are crushing that sheet and creating that shape. So this is actually another one of our businesses, Verified Cross Media, but the globe and even the binary code on the inside of it, you can see has got a shape to it. So same thing here. We actually foiled those three colors and then came back through and did the embossing.
I've got these two here. You want to show them?
Oh yeah, go ahead and show them that one. I'll hold this one for you. Now Ron did a lot of work on this piece, I believe, but it's a pretty exotic piece that we did a couple of years ago. I believe it was for a New Year's party. This would have been a Bellagio New Year's invitation.
It's got a rip out.
So we created the envelope. So we die cut it, we foil it, and then we actually convert it upstairs. We've got about 20 or 30 people that convert things for us by hand. This is the invitation.
They folded that by hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many of those did they fold this year?
I'm going to guess it's been a couple of years now. I'd say that invitation was probably 2, 3, 4, 5,000 pieces, something like that.
How that work that's put into it, and people just throw it away when they're done with it?
I guess if it gets them to the party, I mean, if you send it to me, I'm kind of a pack rat. I might keep that for a while, but
Yeah.
but again, the idea is it's Vegas. There's a lot of flash, and if the flash gets them to the party, that's what they want. So whatever it takes. And this is actually the toned down version. The version that they wanted in the beginning when they came to us actually was spring loaded, so that when you opened it, this would pop open and rest on a spring. And again, all it is money. It's money and time. So as we engineered that and put it together and told them what it was going to cost, well, they started to scant back. They say the sky is the limit, and the sky is the limit in your desire, but then once you start looking at the pieces, that will scant back. Now, this is one that we're actually in the middle of producing right now, so this hasn't, it has gone out so I can show you, but what this is this is just a piece of ivory stock. What we did was we have foiled it, we've embossed it, we've actually even gone back and embossed a leatherette texture to it, because if you look at the scarring, we've even matched the scarring with the emboss. So we've embossed and debossed this to get the feel of leather to that piece of paper. Customer had us stitch part of a book into it. So these are some information pages that they wanted in their pocket folder. This is their pocket folder, and it actually has 2 books that come out of it. So did a crossover. And again, very expensive piece, so somebody doing something more for their top-end customers, but this was also one where they were very critical, as I put those in there, about the crossover. Very unique piece. When we were putting this together, within the shop we probably had, I think, 4 presses on hold, because I had to line up all of these different components. I had a stitcher on hold, and I think I had 4 presses and letterpress on hold, so we could make sure that everything was right. And partly what we're waiting on is take this upstairs, give it to the ladies in hand bindery, let them put it together, and see how the whole thing comes together. Because part of it is this pocket. That pocket is attached to the front. But this was a gorgeous piece. And actually, when they're done, we put a brass grommet on here. So a brass grommet goes on here. There's one behind you there with the grommet. But then after that, even a leather strap. They wrap it twice with a leather strap and tie a specific knot. They're very specific about their knot and what they wanted. So leather this size, leather this long, leather in this dimension.
Did you show them this ideal, or did they create that themselves?
They created it, and then they bring it to us, and then really what we do is we tell them what parts of their idea will work and what won't. One of the extras that we did was we had to move this flap around. So this flap here, we had to move this flap to the inside, and this is actually stage 1. This isn't actually where we ended it. This is still part of our design stuff, because the final one was back about a ½ inch. But what it did, in their mock-up, they were tearing through here with that leather strap. It's still only a piece of paper, and you put a piece of leather on there, you end up tearing it. Well, we put the brass grommet in there. That helped. But then we also folded it over so that you could see that fold, so you didn't see the edge. They liked that, and it also made it twice as strong when I'm putting that leather around it to tie the knot.
You do like a mock-up then?
We probably did about 10 or 12 mock-ups. We start with just very thin paper, and then we'll move to job stock. Again, as the project evolves, we'll do different things. But as we print one piece, like with this, for me to put this together, I can foil and emboss, but once I foil and emboss this, I can't foil and emboss this one because it needs to be in the exact same position, up and down, left and right. And I don't know what that exact position is until I make the pocket folder, until I connect it from my crossover. Everything has to come together exactly or it doesn't work. That's why, again, for us, we've got a very large letterpress department. I can afford to have those pieces of equipment sitting idle, waiting for that project. Again, couldn't do it every day, but on a project like this, it's one of the necessities.
How long did it take you to finish, like that project, from start to beginning?
From start to finish with print on this, we were probably maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks. But we've been talking about it for about 4 months. So again, and when they came to us, they already had a pretty good idea of what they wanted. So there's 4 months since we've been talking to them. I don't know how long before them before that point in time, they were working on it.
And what did it cost per piece?
I'm not sure. Me looking at it, I'm going to say that's probably $15, maybe $20, I'm not sure. They only did hundreds, they didn't do thousands. So again, all of that setup and all of that prep, the more you do, it brings your per piece price down, but it's all of that make ready and all of the preparation that you're paying for. It just depends on how exotic the piece is, what you're doing to it. This was just one page here of another very expensive piece to produce. This is one big piece of foil on the outside, the gold, and then we emboss it. And then there's holographic foil for the jewels here, and another layer of foil in here for the red. And if you think about just sheer quantity and the volume and the time, look in the back here at a windmill. You can see at the speed that windmill is running, one sheet of paper. So one. It's running about 2,000 an hour is probably what he runs. When we do foiling, that's running at about 1,000 an hour, which 1,000 an hour might sound like a lot. When you're up and down, when you're watching the critical registration, trying to make sure that we maintain the quality that we're looking for on the specific pieces, that number can drop way down. I mean, we may average a couple of hundred an hour, depending on the project. So it just depends on what the project is and what the customer's decided to do. Any questions about letterpress or any of these pieces?
You got any foiling going on now so we can see it coming close to the press?
Yeah, if you can just put something, if this one's on. So you can watch it go through a press. Remember, I'm saying heat and pressure. Right now his hot plate is turned off. So you can come on over, stay away from the machine, but you can see the pieces go through, and where it would happen, the foil is on this roll here. He's going to feed his blanks from up here. They're going to go down. Now he's hitting and he's making pressure, but because there's no heat, because the heating unit is turned off, it won't transfer. For the most part, the white part that you see here is, we're looking at the back side, that's almost like a hot melt glue, a very, very thin layer of hot melt glue. This was also, it's one of the pieces of equipment that I look at and I just wonder, who thought of that? Who decided, whoever thought that was going to work?
Like a steam engine.
Yeah.
Mr. Kludge.
Yeah. Very unique, but I like watching that one run because I don't understand it. But this is one where they wanted blue paper, they wanted white image, and in order for us to do that, we're going to actually use a white foil. So this is a white foil that's creating that. And for us, I wasn't sure, I had to look. I can roll it and you can see the sheen value. It's got some shine to it, so I know that it's foil. With foil versus litho,
A little bit.
you could just barely feel it. Oh, and actually printed on both sides. I didn't even see the other side, so foiled on two sides. Even foiled the disclaimer. Again, if that's what they want to do, that's what we'll do. Whatever program you're working in, they'll go ahead and just create that in layers. A designer, like I said, those those corners and the way that they're off, when I say they're off, this one doesn't come quite to the edge, it pulls in. Well, if you look, they all do the same thing. Well, that's just telling me that they all fold the same and nothing folds in the way of each other. They just sequentially have to fold in this direction. Just how the piece goes together. Sometimes we'll get pieces that have to fold in a specific sequence or it's not going to work. So some of those panels need to be shortened up because they have to fit inside the other panels as they fold.
Yeah, there's a battery.
Any questions on the letterpress process? Okay, we can go ahead and we're going to head around the apartment. I do all my mailing. This young lady off to the side, what she's doing, she's taking an insert. She's using the GBR folder, so she's actually taking an 8.5/11. She's folding an 8.5/11 that has variable data on it. She's folding it. It's setting it onto the conveyor here. It's coming down. A number 9 envelope sits on top of it, and then it gets shoved into a number 10 envelope here. The flap is opened during that insertion process. They'll go ahead and wet the gum, plows the flap back over, seals it, and you end up with the sealed envelope. Now that variable that she's doing, it already is addressed for the post office.
They have different addresses.
Everyone is different. So Cynthia, yep. So again, based on that list, whatever the customer list they give us, we'll go ahead and process it for the post office. So we're doing the pre-sorting is what that's called. Now again, part of our disarray right now, we just got a new digital press. So this is another digital press for us. It prints 4/4. It is an iGen. It's got the XXL kit. So for us what that means is it has dimensions of a maximum sheet size of 14 1/3 by 26 inches. That's our third one. So as you can tell, we like them a lot. They work really good for us. Our customers like that oversized piece. That's a pretty good sized digital piece these days. So again, as the next guy comes out with the next biggest one, they'll just eventually get bigger and bigger and bigger. But right now technology has that for the most common, that's the most common size for large digital presses.
It doesn't do a lot of exhaust. The machine that seems like has an exhaust pipe.
Each of these have an exhaust, and really what that is that's just heat. So again, there's no filtration on it, there isn't anything, it's just heat. We do that, and actually ran without the exhaust for a couple, 2 or 3 days. That machine was just installed on Friday. So again, brand new machine. We hooked the exhaust up on Monday, mostly just to get the heat out of the building.
How much does one cost?
One of those is probably $500,000. Printing equipment is very, very capital intense. The big press with the UV lights that the man was running, one of the first presses we looked at, $4.2 million. Again, one of the reasons you can take a tour at night, because we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we have to be. I've got to pay the bills. So with 3 of those, we've also got an HP, which is a different brand. It's a 5-color press, does things a little bit different, but is also, again, a little bit smaller, but also does a very high quality printed piece. It is more of an ink-based device, so it prints more with ink, so to speak, even though it is really a pigment that is suspended in oil, and that's basically the ink that it uses. For the most part, That's the HP. The iGens use a toner base, so pretty much just like the lasers that you would use at home. These are color toners, just big ones. That toner will have a tendency to sit up on top of the sheet. It gives you some advantages and some disadvantages. All processes have pros and cons.
Does that toner cost you as much as it cost me?
I bet I spend more on toner than you do.
Yeah, but my Canon takes like $60 just for that thing. Ridiculous.
Our toner is, maybe for the sake of argument, our toner is free. What it is for us, we pay by the click. So our toner and our supplies are included in our click charges. So even though I'm buying the machine, they charge me so I make a payment on a machine, I also have to make a service payment. So what service plan do I want? Well, part of that service plan includes my clicks. So all of my parts, so as this part breaks and that switch breaks or whatever, they'll come in and do the repairs. So that's parts and labor for all the repairs and all the commodities. But for them to get their money back, because I may use it a lot or use it a little, they capture that on the click rate. So basically on the clicks is where they get it. And I don't see any in here, but our toner cartridges are probably, well, these are for the HP, so really these are going to be, these look like hairspray to me. Not that I need hairspray or need to know why, but basically it looks like an aerosol can, and that aerosol can is pretty much just what you would think. I put this in the machine and a concentrated pigment comes out. It mixes with oil, and almost like I would say not really a fountain drink machine, but a fruit punch drink machine at a restaurant where it just circulates it. That's constantly what it does. So that this oil that this goes into, this pigment is suspended within that oil. The equipment where we have an issue and we're waiting for service. We also do black and white imprints at the other end of the shop. Again, that's kind of in disarray too, because I got a new black, because you can get a much better return on a variable data piece. Instead of just sending a postcard to 100,000 people, I can spend a lot less money creating 10,000 postcards, sending them to people that I've done business with before, or I know have done business in my market before. I'll get a much better return dollar for dollar off of that. The size of 14 by 20, it does 4 colors or less over nothing. Same basic process as the other presses, just for smaller jobs. You have smaller quantities, we'll put them over here.